the hands all down, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome you to the What to Know Before You Go session for the National Library Legislative Day. We are very excited to be having you here in a couple weeks, and I know you'll be excited as well because we've actually managed to improve the weather a little bit. So that's always nice. It's been a strange winter here in Washington, D.C. So our topics today, we're going to talk a little bit about the webinar just so you know how it all works. Some three keys for being heard and agreed with, which is obviously our goal at the end of the day. Some homework assignments and your checklist. So, and we're going to do all this in half an hour. So put your hands and feet inside the car and keep them there at all times because we will be moving right along. So about the webinar, first of all, everyone has joined in a mute-only mode, and what that means is you could speak all you wanted, but I would not be able to hear you. And the reason why we do that is to mitigate any background noise, but you can ask questions. I promise we aren't going to abandon you. There is a questions box on your screen, and if you're not seeing that, you should see a red background with a white arrow, and click on that arrow. You'll get your full toolbar, and if you click next to the little plus sign on the questions, you can type in questions there, and I'll stop periodically to address them. You'll also, one of the questions I always get is whether the follow-up materials and the recording will be available, and they are, so you can listen to this over and over and over again, share with your friends and family. But I also want to let you know where you can download the materials right now. Not that you won't enjoy listening to it all, but there's a website called Kiwi Live, and I'm just going to show you how to do this. So if you go to Kiwi Live and you type in the word advocacy, this is where you're going to be able to download some of the materials I'm talking about. Now, you'll see there's a Get Connected link. You can click on the orange sign that says Do This Later. You don't have to click on the green one. You don't have to put in your name. You don't have to put in your email. We are not the NSA. We're not trying to collect all that. We just want to get you the materials. So when you click on the Do This Later, you will get the shared resources, and that's this PowerPoint and the legislator intel worksheet that I'll show you in a minute. So again, that website is Kiwi Live, and you can download that while we're talking, and then you can get to the recording, obviously, after we've finished, because it's being recorded right now. All right, so let's move on. This is me. I know I've met many of you, but I got my picture beautifully airbrushed, so I have to put it up there every once in a while. My name is Stephanie Vance, and I'm with a company called Advocacy Associates, and I'm officially known as the Advocacy Guru. And we've been pleased to work with the ALA for a long time. We started the business 15 years ago, and I think we've been working with you all since then. So I come at this from the perspective of a congressional staff person. I was always the person that you would be meeting with, and I figured that if I told you how to have more effective meetings, you would get more of what you wanted, which is what I think is a fabulous idea from my friends in the library community. So in order to make sure that we're giving you the materials and information that you want, I'm actually going to check to see who is, I'm assuming most people, you're all going to National Library Legislative Day, but I want to see if you've been there before. So you should have a poll on your screen asking, have you been to National Library Legislative Day before? And you can click on yes or no. And if you click on not sure, that's fine too, although we would have a bigger problem. But we'll wait for the votes to come in. And we've already got 84% of the votes in, so you guys are better than the average voting populace. I'll give a few more seconds for the rest of the votes to come in. I don't want to curtail anyone's democratic rights. All right, we've got about 88% of the votes in, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So we've got a nice even split between, well, not completely even. We've got more no's than yeses, but we've got a fair number of both. So if you have been before and you've got any strategies and techniques you want to share, do feel free to type them into the questions box, and I can share them with others as we go along. But I really want to focus on these three keys to being heard. And to me, those are the keys that you'll need to also get agreed with, which obviously is our #1 goal when we're coming to National Library Legislative Day. So the first one is to know what you want. And to me, there's two kinds of asks. The reason why I focus on knowing what you want is because it's really important in your meetings to ask for something specific. You know, a lot of people come in and they want to educate their elected officials about issues or about what you do in the community, and that's valuable. You want to make sure they know what it is you do, but you also want to make sure that they get engaged in that. And the only way to do that is to ask them for something specific. Now, there's two kinds of asks. There's relationship building asks and there are policy asks. And the policy asks are going to be reviewed in excruciating detail before you go up to Capitol Hill. And I'm going to show you how to review some of the basics of that so you kind of have a good background. But I also think that you should think about relationship building asks, especially in the library community. I really love the idea of bringing legislators into your library, letting them know, for example, if you have a library that has enough space for a town hall meeting, meeting with some of their local district staff, and perhaps most important and easiest is to make some connections with them on social media. And the value of the social media right now is that, for example, if you look up your legislators on Facebook, you'll see that you're getting a lot of information from them about what they're doing, where they're going in the district, what some of their policy priorities are, and you can comment on those. Not a lot of people are commenting on legislators' pages right now, and if they are, it's usually pretty negative. So if you have something positive to say on a legislator's page, they'll usually notice that, or at least the very young person who is monitoring the pages will notice that. So, and I'll show you in a moment some of those social media connections, but you know, a great relationship building ask is, will you follow us on Facebook? That could be, you know, will you follow our library on Facebook? Very simple, but again, it's an ask. You're asking the staff person or the legislator to very specifically do something. So think about, before you come to Washington, D.C., what you would want them to do in the district. What kind of relationship building ask would you like to make? And in terms of the policy asks, I know that sometimes people are concerned about what particular policy asks you might want to focus on. And actually, let me go back to the page where the link is. In terms of the policy asks, I know that everyone is sometimes concerned about what the specific asks will be, and those will continue to be updated as Congress changes its mind about what it wants to do at the last minute on pretty much every issue. But if you go to District Dispatch, which is the ALA Washington office's page, the blog for all kinds of information, and the page where a lot of these resources are listed, you'll see that you've got the key legislative issues and the issue summary that you can review before you come to Washington, D.C. Now, again, these policy issues will be discussed in extensive detail at the National Library Legislative Day, so you don't need to feel like you need to know every single one of these things, but it would be nice for you to be able to review them before you come to Washington, D.C. And so that's why we talk about that as a homework assignment. Best way to get to that is you just go to dispatch.org. And from that page, you can scroll over policy issues and you look at the issue summaries. Now, there's a lot more details on the issues, and you're welcome to take a look at those. But at a minimum, I would strongly suggest reviewing this issue summary. And also on this page is this super cool, fun Harper's Index style points that the Washington office put together on different numbers with libraries and how they relate to other things in the world, like McDonald's. All right, so that's one homework assignment, is to review those policy asks and to also think about what kind of relationship building ask you might want to make before you go into the office. So think about what you might want to show a legislator in the district, or even something simple like, will you follow us on our Facebook page? But the key to that is to make sure that you have a specific ask, something that you want them to do. Otherwise, you'll probably get a whole bunch of fluff about how much they love libraries, and they'll show you their library card, but you may not actually get very far in moving your advocacy issue forward. Okay, so that's the number one thing to do. So once you know a little bit about what ALA is looking at and what your states are looking at, because your state coordinators are obviously going to be setting up a lot of the messages and connecting with the ALA federal office on some of the things that Congress is working on right now. But once you know those, it's good to take a look at who you're talking to. So a little bit about the legislators whose offices you'll be in. And the best way to do that, there's 3 things that I think it's very important to know about your legislators before you go into the office, and these are some of the ways you figure that out. Number 1 is the committees that they're on, so which committees they serve on, and I'll show you how to find that out in just a moment. Number 2 is their policy interests. So what kinds of issues do they like to introduce legislation on, and what kinds of issues do they like to talk about? And number 3 is where are they on the political spectrum? And none of this information is something that you're looking up to decide whether you like or dislike this particular legislator. It's just there for you to understand the best ways to approach that legislator. So if you're new to all of this and you're not 100% sure of things like who your legislator is, or the kinds of places that you would look up this information on a legislator site, I want to make sure that you know how to use the ALA's Legislative Action Center, which is also available from the district dispatch page. All you need to do is scroll over. It actually is right, hold on, district dispatch page. And all you need to do with that is scroll over, take action, and click on the Contact Congress link. And so you'll get to here. And on this page, you can find your elected officials. And if someone wants to type in a zip code, I'd be happy to use yours as an example. But for right now, I'll just use one that I know is specific to a particular legislator. And that legislator is my mom's, because she's my mom. So you'll find when you type in that zip code, you get the different legislators that represent that specific zip code. Now, one of the questions I often get is, which legislator should I be meeting with? Is it the one who represents where I live, where I work, or where we serve people? And your state coordinators are going to be setting up those meetings, but the key is that as long as you have some sort of constituency connection, as long as you can say our library's in your district or I live in your district, that legislator is going to be interested in what you're talking about. So look up the legislators who represent where your library is and where you live, and those are the ones that you'll be doing some research on. So let's take a look at Mr. LaMalfa, and so this is some of the background biographical information that you'll get. And some key things, for example, he's a farmer. That's good to know because he's probably interested in agricultural issues, which we confirm because he's on agriculture and natural resources. Also good to know where his district offices are. So this is his DC office, but there's also the addresses for the offices, the local offices. And those are the offices that if you would like to connect with his local staff, these are the offices that you would call. And so if you know which one of these offices is nearest your library, you can suggest to the staff person that you're meeting with in Washington, D.C. that you'd like to connect with the district staff people in those libraries. So once you take a look at that, you can then go to the congressperson's website. So you see if you click on this site, you get to Mr. LaMalfa's site. And here you can scroll over these various links. Every legislative site is different. So you may not see these exact same tabs, but you all are librarians, so I know, are associated with the library community, so I know you know how to do research. So I usually look at something called issues. Sometimes it's called legislation. Sometimes, like in this case, it's got different tabs. But I like to look at the issues page because when we click on that, we can see some basic information about various issues that the congressperson is interested in. And these are statements that he's making about how he feels about these various issues. I suggest that you not just look at the education or library issues or library-related or technology-related issues. I suggest that you really look through some of these other ones because it will give you a sense of how that legislator thinks, what kinds of values he or she has, what kinds of language he or she uses. And again, this isn't a matter of whether you agree with them or not on these issues. It's a matter of knowing how they see the world before you go in and talk to them. So scroll through, take a look at some of these. That will help you understand some of the ways that they talk about issues and some of the things that they're most interested in. Now, I had a note in the Q&A box I got a zip code, so we're going to go ahead and look that up just so I can show you that I am not making this up based on my mom's page. 48476, so let's do that. 48476. And as that's looking up, I had someone say, what do we search on Kiwi Live? The word is advocacy. So that's what you type into the Kiwi Live box. And I'm going to type that into the chat box just so you guys have it. And there we go. So 48476 here, when we look at this particular legislative, this particular ALA page, you see that you've got, in this case it's great because this particular zip code is associated with just one representative. Sometimes you'll find that the zip code is connected with 2 or 3 different representatives, so you might have to put in your full street address. So Mr. Moulinar, you can see you get your committee information, and you can also, again, take a look at the web page. And often they'll have a sign up for my e-newsletter. I suggest you do that so that you can get some of the information about him and what he's interested in, or her. And you can see here there's an issues page again, so he also has the same structure. And we can just take a look at some of these. Oh, we have the same image as Mr. Lamalfa does. Interesting. So you can take a look at some of these, read some of these. One of the ones that they often have is something on veterans. And, you know, that's always a good way to connect with them if you do any work with veterans at your library or any kind of groups like that. But your huge advantage is that if you know they're interested in a particular issue, you can help them out with that issue. You can give them resources that they might need to move forward on policy issues, or at least to know a little bit more about the policy issue that they're interested in. And speaking of policy issues and bills that they're interested in, we always have to go to the Library of Congress website because we all love this site. And another great thing to do is to look up the bills that your legislator has introduced. Sometimes you can do that from their website, but sometimes they don't have that information there. And so I'm going to just pick one at random. I'm going to go with Mr. Bishop. And you'll see here that when you click on his page that he's introduced 4,000, or he's sponsored or co-sponsored 4,000 bills. I do not want you to look at all 4,000 bills. I want you to narrow it down to 2 key things. First of all, sponsored legislation. And then because this Congress is new, you might find that there's not a lot of bills that were introduced, and he looks like he doesn't generally introduce a lot of bills. So this might be, you know, you could scroll down this particular list here, because these are the bills that he personally is very involved with. And so you'll see there's a disabled veterans issue. There's a National Historic Park boundary revision. So if you're from his district and you have information on the National Historic Park, archival information or something along those lines, that looks like it's something he's interested in. And then, of course, we have the duty on certain grill brushes, so that's important. You'll see a lot of those. It's usually pretty funny. But once you know that, you can let them know that you've got information and resources on those things. And even if you don't, or even if you're uncomfortable raising that, at least you know that before you go in. So these are the House.gov, the Senate.gov. I showed you those through the Legislative Action Center. VoteSmart is another resource, and this is particularly valuable for the newer members. So you can find your legislator on this site, and once you do that, you can scroll over and take a look at some of their speeches. So let's look at Mr. Lamalfa as an example, because we have him in our brain, and we'll look at Mr. Lamalfa. And now you take a look over here at speeches, and you'll see a lot of speeches that he's made and letters that he's sent on various issues. Again, don't feel like you need to read all of these, but what you're doing is just getting some basic background information on them. If you're interested in who's contributed to their campaigns, opensecrets.org is a great site. But as you look that up, please don't plan to walk into their offices and say, hey, I was just noticing that so-and-so contributes to your campaign. They really like to keep the political and the policy very separated. So again, good background for you, but not something that you really need to focus in on with them. All right. One of the questions I get in you're figuring out who you're talking to, that second key, is meeting with staff people. Is it different than meeting with the legislator? Because sometimes you're not talking to the legislator, him or herself. You're talking to the staff person. And a couple of key points there is that, first of all, it's better to meet with the staff person than the legislator because they can move your policy issue forward a lot better and a lot faster. With the legislator, you're often going to get what we call a grip and grin, which is a handshake and a, hey, how you doing, and that's pretty much it. But the staff people are really the eyes and ears of the member, and you're going to get much more time with them, and they're going to have a lot more expertise on your issues. So never feel like you're being put off when you're meeting with a staff person. That's actually better than meeting with the member. The main difference in talking to a staff person versus a legislator is pronouns. Instead of saying, will you co-sponsor this bill, you say, will your boss co-sponsor this bill? Or instead of saying, will you visit the library, although you should invite them personally to the library, you would say, will your boss visit the library? It's just that different. They are really sort of appendages of the legislator, and so once you know all of that information about the legislator, you can use that in any of your conversations with staff people, just phrasing it with that slight difference. So your homework assignment there is to learn a little bit about the audience, the people who you're talking to, or the legislators and their offices that you're talking to. And these are some of the resources that we have on that I just mentioned in the PowerPoint, and connecting via social media. Obviously, just go to their Facebook pages and their Twitter feeds and find them. A resource that we have for you that is on that Kiwi Live page is a legislator intel worksheet. So you can do this to figure out all that information I just showed you about the legislator, and you can fill this in. And again, sometimes people feel that this should be an hour-long thing for each legislator, and even if you've done 5 minutes of work, you will be far, far ahead of where most advocates are. So please, this is supposed to be fun and useful. It's not supposed to feel like a giant chore. All right, so number 3 of the keys to being heard is to know how to talk to them. And this is the SPIT technique, which is specific, personal, informative, and timely. So you want to be specific about what you want, and that's where that ask comes in. You want to have a personal story. What you really bring to the table is the connection between the extremely strange things in Washington, D.C. and what goes on in the district. And so you deliver that through a personal story. And that's why it's so important to know things about your legislator, because you can develop your personal stories based on what that legislator is interested in. So, for example, if you see a legislator has introduced a lot of bills on small business issues, you would develop some personal stories about people that you've helped in the library who are starting a small business. Or if your legislator likes employment issues, you would talk a lot about how the library is the only place that people can go to fill out online job applications. So those personal stories are important. Informative, definitely want to have a few facts and figures about your library. It doesn't have to be extensive information about surveys, etc., or polling data. It's just how many people use your library, what kinds of services you have. That kind of information is going to be valuable, and I know your state coordinators are also working on that, so you don't need to feel like you need to put all of that together for every legislator, but just know a little bit about your own library and the number of people you serve. And then timely, that's just a matter of making sure that you're asking for these things at a time when the legislator or staff person can actually provide it. So this is a great time to be coming to Washington, D.C., because they're just starting to really get going on a range of different issues that you'll be working on. So just the timely piece is something that you have already achieved. Excellent work. So here's a message formula that you can use to kind of develop your message. Think about what kinds of things you want to say, and we'll actually, if you're a first-timer, we'll have a first-timer session on May 3rd in the afternoon, and we'll go over a lot of these, and then that will be in your program information. But we'll go over a lot of these so that you know exactly how to do this, and we'll do some role playing and such, and there will be fabulous prizes. But ahead of time, if you take a look at this, this will help you get a little bit prepared. Your main homework assignment with this is to come up with at least one example of how your library specifically helped someone. So even if it's, it doesn't have to be necessarily something very specific to the legislator that you've done homework on, although that would be nice. Just any, we helped someone start a small business. We've helped a young person learn how to read. We've helped people get jobs. Just one example of how your library specifically helped a specific person. So that's your homework on that. And you can try and see how you might fit that into the message formula, and this will be going over more at the first-timer session. So perhaps most important of all of this is to have some fun. As I've said, I gave you a whole bunch of stuff to do in half an hour. And so you've got your homework assignments. Hopefully you've got some resources that will help you achieve those goals. And but don't feel like it's a chore. It's supposed to be fun, and democracy is supposed to be something that you enjoy participating in. So here's your checklist, just making sure that you've got some of these ideas in your head before you come to National Library Legislative Day. Again, all the policy issues will be discussed there, so you don't need to worry about whether you know what the bill numbers are and what Section 672 of Code 439 means. That's not a real one, by the way. You just need to make sure you've thought about some of these things. If you have, you will be far, far more prepared than most people who come to Washington, D.C. And with that, I'm going to leave this checklist up, and I'm going to see if you've got any questions at all. I'm happy to stay on the line a little bit longer, even if it's questions about what do I wear, or where are the restrooms, or I don't know, who my legislator is. We showed you how to look that up. If you've got any questions along those lines, please do feel free to ask them. But if you are ready and eager and raring to go, we'll look forward to seeing you at the beginning of May, and thanks so much for taking some time.